what we're trying to showcase is really how we can, if we have code that is not working, and that could be because somebody wrote code, let's say they started a project, they did not finish, and then you get assigned to pick up the pieces. There was some upgrade that was done into one of the components of that particular code, and so suddenly it's not working anymore. So in this particular example, it was actually code that was basically broken on purpose in order to illustrate how to go troubleshooting it. So I'm going to show you basically the repo. The link of the repo is basically in the chat. And the code basically has two folders. There's a sandbox folder that contained actual code, and there's a module /VPC folder that contains basically a Terraform module, such as you will basically get from the Terraform registry. So the idea is that if you follow, the creators of Terraform and the HashiCorp engineers, their recommendation is usually don't try to start writing code from scratch, right? Try to reutilize modules that they've certified, that they've tested, that's been in production, that is validated. And the way to do that is when you go to the Terraform registry, you can actually see their signature next to that particular piece of code. So you grab that and you create basically a module in your code, and then you start from there, and then you can tweak it to match your use case. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to close the door because I have my son running around. Okay. So that's kind of what we have. So that's the code. That's the repo is public, so you can access it. You can clone it. We'll do all of that in a minute. As far as the document itself, I actually put it on WhatsApp. So you have a copy, a PDF version of the entire steps. It's a long document, and I did that on purpose to really show every single step. I'm going to make it just wider so that we can see really quick, and then we'll just start the hands-on. So every step is in there. It's even the basic steps. The idea is that we want to make sure that by the end of the lab, everybody is able to make it work. So you have, not only do you have the commands, but you also have a screen copy of each command. But let's just get a quick overview, right? So the idea is, you want to fix a code, right? If you have an outage in production, the first priority is to fix the code and bring things back online, right? And then after that, we can go back and try to find out what happened, refactor the code, discuss it, share the findings so that, we don't have that kind of problem in the future. That's kind of the idea. And for Terraform, if you will, I'm going to call it, if you will, a pipeline, for the lack of a better word, but how you will go about not just writing your Terraform code or even troubleshooting it is you have the code, you do a Terraform format, and what that does is it rearranges the code to match kind of the best practices on how to present. So it's just about organization of your code. After that, you will do a Terraform validate, which basically checks the syntax and make sure that all the elements are present and they are written according to the expectation of the language. The next step will be to do a Terraform plan, where Terraform basically reads your code and kind of generates an execution plan. And you can obviously output that execution plan into a file. And the idea here is that in production, you definitely want to be able to version that execution plan. So that will give you a history, basically, of all the changes. Not just as far as the code, but even as far as the execution plan, so that something goes wrong, you have both to kind of go back and see what happened. And at the end, the Terraform apply obviously is what creates basically the infrastructure. And since we are in a live environment, you certainly at the end want to do a Terraform destroy so you don't get charged by AWS or other cloud providers. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to look at the code. We're going to basically run through these steps. and they're going to reveal if the code is good or if there's a problem, and then we'll try to troubleshoot. So questions, comments? I mean, a comment could be good so far, right? I'm good. I get it. Everything's cool. Something, right? We want this to be kind of interactive both ways, because otherwise,
Yeah, I'm good so far.
Okay, good. Because the reality of it is that Terraform is not that complex, right? When you look at the workflow, right? You write your code and you just run through these commands until it works, really. The difficulty becomes when now you have to go in the code and start tweaking and adding things and changing things to match whatever issue you try to solve. So, cool. So I'm going to move this to the side. Like I said, it's available to you guys on the WhatsApp group. I'm going to move that out of the way, and then we'll actually go and look at the reports. And I did not show you so there's a table of contents that show you actually, let me show that real quick. Because again, the idea is to make it as easy as possible. So the next page, actually correction, the page before that has this table of content, right? That shows you, fix the code, troubleshoot the code, every single step. And then after the code is kind of working, we can now go back and look at the code and says, does it actually match the best practices, right? Do we have values that are embedded in the code? Do we have variables that are within the modules? Stuff like that. Just reorganize it, and it makes it easy. Now, let's say you want to create the different environment. You want to create your dev, maybe your prod, your staging environment. If your code is well organized, it could be just a matter of creating another folder and just reutilizing the same code. But if it's a pile of spaghetti, then you have certainly more trouble doing it. So basically, this is our code. What we're going to do is right now, we're going to just go ahead and start. We're going to go and clone it. Step is obviously you want to clone it to your local computer, your local machine. So we'll grab that, and I just need to grab a folder somewhere. Yep, this is it. Put it right here on the side. And what I'm going to do there is just do a git bash. Again, so far, nothing too crazy, right? I mean, all of us, we are pretty good with all that stuff. So I'm just going to clone the repo at this point. And if I do an LL, basically that's where all the stuff is. So I just cloned it. I'm going to basically move into the repository, into the local repository. And as we can see, I'm on the main branch, right? That's going to come into play down the road, and we'll talk about it. But I want to see what I have. I definitely have what we talked about earlier, the sandbox, which is really where you do all your modifications, and that's where you write your code. And the modules should be hopefully a module that is validated probably from the Terraform registry. So I have those two. Now we try to fix this code, right? So are we just going to go and jump in the code and start fixing it? Or what do you guys think we should be doing before we move forward? And I gave you a hint when I said we are on the main branch. If you had this situation,
should you run Terraform for it?
Not quite yet, because right now you're on the main branch, right? Even though it's not working, it's still the main branch. Do we really want to make changes on the main branch?
No. Create a new branch.
Perfect. That's what you want to do. And then for the sake of time, we only have 1 hour. I'm not going to type necessarily all the commands. I'm just going to go ahead and sometimes copy and paste. Normally, when I was doing this lab myself, and I did it probably 3 times so far, just to make sure that I give you good information, I will type every single command, and that's how you really, become, good at those commands. So yeah, we definitely need to create a new branch and make sure that we are not making modifications directly on, the main branch. Okay, so I just created my new branch, right? So I created my new branch locally, but is it available on a remote repository on GitHub at this point? Yes or no? It's not a tricky question. The answer is that it's not, because I haven't pushed anything up, right? So what's going to happen if I try to push? You just created a branch locally. The remote repository is not aware that you did that. So therefore, it's not going to do it. You have to indicate that there's a new branch and link it up with the remote repository. So that's how you do it. It actually gives you the instructions, so you can do it that way. So at this point, I have a new branch. My new branch is in sync with my remote repository, right? So I can now go ahead and start looking at the code itself. And I want to look at the code. What is a nice tool that we all use that is free and really good for code manipulation and stuff.
We have the VS Code.
Okay, so I'm going to just do a code there to open my code, right? And after that, so basically I have you and have my sandbox. So those are the files. And if I'm looking at the sandbox, the primary file is basically the VPC file. In order to do anything, I'm going to probably need a terminal, right? So I'm going to open the terminal. Probably a good idea to use git bash so that you have access to all the commands versus the PowerShell. So at this point, we're really ready to start, right? We have our code. We have, another thing that we want to make sure, right? What branch are we on? We are on the hotfix branch. So we're not touching the main branch. So if we go back to the workflow that I talked about at the beginning, right? Terraform format, Terraform validate, Terraform plan, and then Terraform apply. That's really what we're going to be doing at this point. So what I want to do here is I want to do a Terraform format just to, it doesn't do too much stuff, right? But I did that, but nothing happened. Why is that?
Probably because your formatting is correct.
Yes, but also because we are basically, hold on, let me put this on it so you can see. If I do an LL, are we within access of the code?
No.
Exactly. So we have to switch and go into the sandbox. And now if I do a Terraform format, now clearly we had the two files that were not formatted correctly and they just got formatted correctly. Terraform just reorganized them. So you also want to make sure that you are in the right folder before you issue a Terraform commands. Because otherwise you can run it and it would say configuration is normal, but you're not even running anything at that point. One thing that I would suggest if you are troubleshooting is to make sure that you capture your changes, right? Because let's say we do this and we just keep going, and at some point we have a major crash. Now we have nothing saved, right? So you want to version as you go. So how do I version? Obviously, I want to make sure that I have my Git status that will tell me what's going on with my files. And again, for the sake of time, I will just link all these commands in like one line. And then we can tweak them and do all of them all at once. So I'm going to do a git add. And as a matter of fact, there's a shortcut where you can actually do a git commit -am. And then you can put the message. In this case, what will the message? File formatted, right? And after that, what do I need to do? I need to do a git push. So by doing this on one line, I basically have everything done, right? Another thing that would be cool to do is, and we'll do it on the next step, is to do a git status at the end to make sure that my environment is now clean. And as you can see, I have nothing to commit. So if I'm working, I do a git status that will show me what files are basically on track at this point. Then I do a git-am. The A basically does the git add dot, right? Adds, move the files to the staging area. And then the M, the message is your git commit. And then after that, you can do a git push. And at the end, if I do another git status, I can see that I started with these files and then I uploaded everything and now everything is clean. And if we went, and I'm just showing this as a shortcut, right? This is one way to do it. Where does it always work? No, there's some cases where you will have to go in and tweak it. But if I go back, no, that's not the one. Stand by. But yeah, we pushed it. I was trying to get the repo to actually show you guys that everything is good. I have so many copies of the repo. But again, we know it's good. So yeah, we're not gonna waste time on that. So we formatted our files, we pushed them away, right? What's the next step? If you remember the workflow, right? The formatting is good. What do you next?
Plan?
I mean, you can jump and do a
Do you
Terraform plan,
validate?
right?
Validates.
Terraform
Okay,
validate. Excellent.
That's right.
Excellent. Yep.
Yeah,
So if I
please,
do a Terraform,
can you post the link to that documentation on this chat?
I tried to do that earlier, and it was, causing me some grief, and that's why. It's on WhatsApp. It's on the WhatsApp, on the public WhatsApp, the DevOps full stack WhatsApp. Actually, I just uploaded it now. Yeah, I had it pasted, but it wasn't transmitted, so it should be on there right now on the group WhatsApp. Okay, so we do the Terraform validate, and we get these two messages. Okay. So the first message is about Terraform constraints. So you put when you write your code, you definitely want to put a constraint on the version, and the reason is obviously from one version to the next there are some changes, and you want to make sure that what's going to give you the result that you want. Then the second error that we have is this one where we have invalid default value for the variable on line 12. This one is an easy one. I mean, if you read the error message, you can see that this particular syntax is deprecated. In other words, Terraform doesn't recommend using it anymore. There's a new way to do it, and I'll show that in a minute. Let's look at the line. This is on line 19, right? That should be in the VPC as well. Provider TF, not the VPC, but provider. So if we go to the provider TF file on line 19, that's where our warning is coming from. It's not an error, it's a warning, but you don't want to leave a warning there because Terraform is clearly telling you that this is not the way to do things now anymore. So if you leave this there, when they actually completely remove it, you may have an issue with your code. So we'll address that, and we'll address the second message, which is on the VPC on line 12. And the message is that this default value is not compatible with the variable type constraint. In other words, we're defining a type string, but what kind of variable do we have here?
List.
And if you need a hint, look at the one that's right below.
A list?
Lists.
Exactly. So this one is an easy one. I can just grab this guy right here and just put it up there and problem solved. Actually, I'm missing an L. So that should be sufficient to solve that one. But looking at this one, if we go to the version constraint, right? The TF line 12. So if I go to provider TF line 12, and this is where also, were you guys able to open the document?
Yes, the PDF is open.
Yeah, the PDF. Perfect. So if you look at the PDF, and I only have so much real estate on my screen here on my laptop, but I have it on an external window. But if you look at the PDF, you will see I actually have a before and after that shows the proper way of writing the constraint on the version now versus before. And instead of having what they have here, which is version, you actually move it into a Terraform block, into the Terraform block. And that's the way to do it now. And that will definitely work. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So you have the document. Is everybody, does everybody have the document open?
I do.
Okay, let me rephrase it. Is there somebody who does not have the document open? Because Because if you have it open, it will really help with you following along, and then I can move a little bit faster to make sure that we cover everything. Is there anybody who does not have it? Okay. Sounds like everybody has it. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and basically I'm going to go to my provider. So what we want at the end in the provider.tf, change these two right here, the Terraform and the provider. I'm just going to paste again for the sake of time, right? And if you look at the document, that's your new Terraform block. And it actually has the version information, which was actually in the provider block, which is the old way of doing it. So we just moved it up out of there into this one, and we just added this required provider block. That's the new way to do it. And I think we already did this one, right? We fixed that. So how do we make sure that we actually solve the problem? We go ahead and do another Terraform validate. And if everything is good, see, we have a completely different error, right? It's not that error that we had earlier. So completely different error. And again, what I try to do is capture what I already did, right? So I fixed these two errors. I'm going to here. So again, I do a git status. I do a git commit -am, but I need to change this message. So what do? We fix version constraints. And what variable did we fix? Yeah, that was the private subnet CIDR blocks. And I would say private subnets CIDR. I do enter there. Same thing. So what we have is basically the two files that we just modified. So if I do a git status, commit, right? So nothing to commit, the working tree is clean. So we know our changes were uploaded. What I want to do is at some point show you guys, we can do it at the end, just show you guys that it's, and I mean, you can actually do it on your computer at home, right? Because I don't want to be moving too much from screen to screen. You can actually take a look at the repo that we started with and see that we are slowly building and, building the solution and resolving the mistakes that were in the repo. So that was done. So we need to move forward. So I'm going to do another Terraform validate. So now I have a completely different error. And the error is that the module is not yet installed, right? Does that makes sense, right? I mean, the module is not installed. We haven't done Terraform init, and Terraform init is what really installs the module, right? Everybody good?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yes, so Terraform is basically telling us you haven't done Terraform init. So we'll go ahead and do that. So if I issue a Terraform init, I get all these messages. I'm going to clean a little bit my screen there so we can really see what's going on, right? So I get all these errors, and the message is that I have an unreadable module directory, unable to evaluate the directory symlink, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Terraform is unable to find the module, right? So what I want to do at that point is go to my vpc.tf, where the module is actually declared, right? So this is the code for the module. And if Terraform cannot see the module, right, it's probably an issue with the source. Are we pointing to the module correct? Now looking at the documentation that gives the answer, let's just look at the structure here, right? I'm going to collapse this for a minute. We are in this file. We are in this file right here, right? So if I'm within Sandbox and I'm trying to point to this up here, is that the correct path? I want us to think a little bit about these things versus just, looking at the answer.
It's not the correct path.
So what would be the correct path?
we have to remove the dot slash. So it should be, yes, dot slash.
So what do you want me to do?
Remove the dot slash.
Oh, like that?
Yeah, and then it should be dot slash.
Dot slash like this?
Yes.
Okay. Let's try that. Terraform init. It's still not working. So remember, this is where we are, right? We are within this folder. We are within the sandbox, right? Because we are in the sandbox. We're looking at the VPC, file. We are inside the VPC file. So I basically need to get out of this folder and then point to that other folder. So is it a dot? What does the dot signify? When we do
it's time directory, so it's a dot.
Exactly. Yeah, when you do dot, you basically talk about a current directory. So let's try that and see what happens. So at least now, clearly Terraform was able to find the module because it's actually telling us there's an error inside the module. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So, and this error here is on module VPC on line 18. So I'm going to go inside module VPC main TF line 18. So what's the problem there?
Isn't it missing after the equal sign?
Mm-hmm. So the VPC ID is not defined, right? And that's what the problem is there.
Right.
How will we get that information? Let's say, you're looking at this code and you try to find the VPC ID. And the resource where we define the VPC, correct?
You just scrolled past it.
Oh, did I? Okay. Let's see.
Right there under the route table.
Route table.
Line 44.
VPC, yeah, 44.
44.
VPC ID.
Okay. Yeah, this is the answer though, but I wanted us to actually look at the resource. It's the definition of the VPC. To see how you actually come up with this. But if everybody is clear on that, because I don't also want to waste too much time. If everybody just clear on this, I can just put the answer, we can move on. Is everybody clear on how to generate, let's say, an element of a resource in Terraform based on the resource definition block? That's what I'm asking. In other words, if I was trying to refer, let's say, to this route table, to the public route table, and let's try to maybe get the VPC from there. So you will basically get the type of resource, dot the name, and then dot whatever information you're looking for. And that's what they did here. So you get it's a type VPC, and we're talking about the application VPC, and we want the ID information. So yeah, this will be the correct information. And that was on line 18, correct? So right there. Yep, AWS the underscore VPC dash application underscore VPC .id. And I actually want to show you where you will find it. Like it will be in the module VPC main file. There's a resource definition somewhere right there. The first one, that's the definition of your VPC. And this is where you will actually get and confirm that combination. So AWS underscore VPC, that's your type of resource, application VPC, and then you try to get the ID. So we know for a fact that's the right information. Do you guys want me to speed up, or is this, the current pace good? Because again, I don't want to bore people with basic stuff. Do you feel like this is too basic, we need to move faster, or is this good?
It's good.
Okay, good. And please stop me if you feel like I'm going too slow or going too fast. The whole idea is for us to, all learn. As we're doing this, we all learn. The more we ask questions, the more we participate, the more we can get something out of this. And obviously, If we actually do the lab ourselves afterward, that's really when we solidify that information. Okay, so we did, so it's just going to be the same thing. We're just going to keep doing kind of the same deal. I'm going to move this a little bit and move this completely out of the way. Perfect. Okay. So I did Terraform init again, and now I have a different error, right? Line 22. And by the way, I will, if I was doing this in life, like in real, I would be capturing my changes, pushing them to my repo, make sure that I commit them. Again, for the sake of time, we can just keep going. But it's probably a good practice because, again, let's say you're in the middle of doing this and then they put you on something else, right? If you didn't capture what you did, when you come back, you'll be like, oh, I don't even remember where I was and stuff like that. So there's really a lot of good reasons to capturing each step as you go. Think like you're pushing, I don't know, a big rock, to the top of the mountain, right? You push it, you block it, and, anyways. So we have a new error, which is on line 22. And this is the error, right? So basically the variable is not defined. So who can tell me what does the count variable do in Terraform? Like
I
when
think
we
it tells
use a
you how
count.
many.
It's like a replica. So it replicates
Yeah.
the resources.
Man, look
How
at you!
many
Look at
servers
you
you
throwing
wanna
Kubernetes in the mix. Yeah, it's kind of the same idea as a replica set, if you will, like the number of replicas. You use the count when you try to create multiple copies of that particular resource. You can also use a for each loop to do the same thing. So, yep, that error there on the count. We'll just grab it. It's module VPC main. I'm going to just grab the answer, and if the answer is not clear, we can talk about it. But again, it's on the document that I shared with you guys. I encourage you to take a look at that. And I'm going to put the answer, and then we're going to talk about it. So I'm trying to get the count. All right, so what am I defining? I'm defining my public subnets, plural. So I have several public subnets. And I have a variable, which is public subnet CIDR blocks. If I want to define a subnet, I need to give a CIDR block, correct? So if we go, not there, but try to find what file we have that information. Sandbox vpc.tf has the information. So if I come here, right? So these are the private subnet CIDR blocks, and we also have the public subnet CIDR blocks. And clearly we can see we have 3 of them, So if I was trying to create subnets, I would use the count, which is basically the length. How many of these variables do I have in this particular list? And that will tell me the number of subnets that I should create. And that's what we did there. So if I go back to that main, that's what we did right there. So we just go ahead and see how many CIDR blocks were defined inside that variable for the public subnet. Here. Everybody good? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Again, I want to make sure that we are on the same page, guys. And okay, so that's good. So hopefully that solved that problem. It did. And now we move to line 48, still in the same file. So we just scroll down to 48. And 48, same kind of problems. Somebody was trying to define a gateway ID, but did not put that information down. So we got to find that information. And what you would do is you would find that particular resource, and then you will basically grab that information. So gateway ID. So the gateway ID is, yeah. So if we go to main TF on line 34, I just want to show you real quick, line 34 right there. That's where you have your gateway, internet gateway. You can actually build this together for once, right? Just so we can do it together. So I will grab that. I will have it pasted here and start with your type. dot the name of the gateway, the ID. I'll just put I and then that's my value right there. Good. So both errors were about line 48, right? So we're not going to worry about that too much. So we can just go ahead and try the next one. So now I have an error still in the same file, but on line 94. So we'll scroll down to 94. So we're at line 94. I have now the route table ID. So basically what you try to do here is to create associations between the subnet and the route table, right? And we have a missing piece of information right there. Can anybody point direction what information should go there? Even if you have to look at the answer, that's fine. It's just to have, you know, I just want that two-way communication.
The count index, count.index.
Perfect. So we try to create, you know, several associations, and then we have a count that is based on the length, which is the number basically of private subnets. So you want to basically loop on that index. Okay. So then we'll do the next one. So when I do the next one now, different error. GeoVPC outputs.tf on line 1. So if I go to output.tf on line 1, so I have one of the outputs is the ID, which is basically the ID of the VPC, right? If you're creating a VPC, you probably want to have that value at the end. But the description was added, but it's missing the value, right? So we will have to add a value there. And we need to add the VPC information. How do we return the VPC ID? So in order to do that, if I went to Sandbox VPC, that's not the one. I have the value. I just want to show you how to get it. Is everybody clear on how to get the value? Or do you want me to show you how to do that? Because we've done it before. So you have to basically find where we're defining the VPC. And that's something I probably should have added to the documentation, you know, exactly where you will find that information. Because the files are not like in the proper, you know, best practices type organization right now. That's the module, that's the output. Okay, let me go here to this main. Yeah, that's my VPC right there. So I'm defining the VPC. So if I did the same thing that we did before, I copy that. And I want to go back to the outputs.tf, which is right here. And I'm trying to get the value of the VPC. I'm going to paste that. So there I have the value of my VPC. And just do Terraform init again. What do you guys think? It looks like we may not have an init error anymore, right?
Yeah, it works.
It's initialized, right? What happens during initialization is that Terraform will go and download, obviously, all the modules and bring them locally that are basically referenced in your code. So it's the environment, the backend is initialized. You got all the modules ready to go. But does it mean that this code is working? Maybe, right? Maybe. So we did. What did we do so far? We did.
Need to plan.
Go ahead.
Need to run a Terraform plan.
Correct. Yep, 100%. So we did Terraform format. We did Terraform validate. and then we did Terraform init. And then the next step will be to do a Terraform plan and then see, if the code is working. And it's not. So we still have a couple of errors popping up. So let's look at the first one. So I'm looking at the vpc.tf line 33 in the module sandbox. So I go to sandbox and I'm looking at VPC, right? Line 33. So here, what is the problem? The argument VPC underscore CIDDRR underscore block is required, but no definition was found. Okay. The other error that we have is that this private subnet CIDR block was not defined. In other words, if you define this module, you're going to define the public subnets, but you also need your private subnets, right? And that's what's missing. This error is kind of connected to the other one. If you look at it, closely, in other words, line 38, which is this one, what it's telling you is that you have this there, but it's not supposed to be there. And on the flip side, it's telling you that this one is required, was not found. Now, if you're looking at this and that, doesn't that look like more like a typo than anything else? Are you guys still with me?
Yeah.
Do I need to play like a video to get everybody to get more excited? We have to be excited about this stuff. It's fun, and the more we do it, the easier it becomes. Really, that's the answer. But we got to get involved. Anderson always talks about it, that what you put in is what you get. So let's really get excited about this stuff, and that way we can guarantee that we'll basically get a good control over it. So yeah, so we have this variable, which to me looks like the proper name versus this other one, and the argument is required, but no definition was found. And then on the flip side of that, this one is not expected there. So let's go and find out where this thing is coming from, this particular variable. And I think it's either in that main, find out where they have it. Sake of time, I took the time to search so you guys don't have to do it. So I'm gonna go just find it and then we'll fix it. So sandbox vpc.tf. Yeah, it's in the modules VPC variable. So it's actually in this file. And if you look, basically they define a variable using this name. But then when it was time to use it on the v.tf on line 38, they use that name, right? Can you guys see that? In the module right there, I defined this variable.
Yes.
And then when I went to do my VPC, I use a different name. So I get two errors because of that. In other words, the Terraform is expecting this name, right? Because it says the argument is required, but no definition was found. That's the error. And on the flip side, you now define this, which Terraform is like, I don't know why you put that there. I don't need it, which is that error right there. An argument name, this was it's not expected, because what I'm expecting is what you define in your variable file. So the way to fix that is just to go back and just make sure that you have the right name. So typos can also get you when it comes to your code. So just that right there should fix the problem. And we'll try in a minute and we'll see that it fixes the problem. So that should fix this problem, and that will fix also that last problem. Now, the thing that we do not have is the private subnet CIDR blocks variable definition, and that will be on VPC on line 33. So if I go to VPC on line, okay, hold on, let me make sure I'm looking at the right ones. Module sandbox VPC, line 33. Yep. So in here, I'm supposed to have, again, the private subnet CIDR blocks definition, and I do not have it currently. But just based on this, I can probably just copy this and change it and match it. But I'll go and get the answer so we don't have to again spend too much time on it. And that's the VPC file. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I could just copy this and tweak the public. And if you're doing your code right, things kind of, match, right? Your public definition should not be too different from your private. What will change is maybe what you have inside the definition of the public versus the private subnet. But you want to organize those things kind of in a similar way. That way it's easier to maintain. And if you need to make changes, it's not complicated. So that's what will solve those three issues. And again, to confirm that, let's do another Terraform plan. Okay, so we have completely different set of errors, right? Now we have in the module VPC main TF, which is that file. And we're looking at line number 9. So this is your 9 number line. And if you read the message, basically AWS retired the EC2 Classic class of instances. So this link is basically deprecated and will be removed in future versions. Again, it's just a warning at this point, but you don't want to have things like that. It's sitting in your code because when they actually remove it, that's when they can actually potentially break your code. So we don't really need that anymore because that class doesn't even, it's not going to be existing in the future. We can just comment it and that should take care of that. The next error was module VPC main TF on line 29. So same file, line 29.
Question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
So what happens if you actually have like a huge number of these EC tools that are being depreciated by AWS, and then you had them in a Terraform document like this? How do you upgrade them or change them?
That would be use case dependent, right? If you can obviously the solution will be definitely to move towards the new generation. So if AWS is telling you we're not going to be using that in the future, what do you think is the right move? You don't want to stay there, right? It's like if you reach end of life for a product, they're not going to support you when the time comes. You don't want to be stuck in limbo. Obviously, we usually don't get to make those decisions, but at least you can make the recommendation and say, hey, by the way, XYZ, maybe it's time to upgrade XYZ. Does that answer your question?
My question is, how do you update that in Bash? You can just
how do you update that in Bash? That's way outside of the scope of what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Because now you're talking about a migration, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, on that, if you want to have something on the side, because again, the whole we have 1 hour, I want to make sure we cover everything. But the idea is you will definitely have to migrate towards what AWS is telling you. We're not going to be using that. This is what we are going to be using in the future. It just makes sense to move in that direction because otherwise you get stuck in limbo and you probably don't get.
Thank you. It's okay. You've actually answered. The answer is migrating to another thing. Thank you.
Okay.
Please, before you proceed, could you try and expand the VS Code? The prints are so tiny.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I'm using a laptop though.
I'm so sorry. But again, remember, I don't know if you are in front of a computer. My recommendation would be to actually open your VS Code and have the code in front of you because I need basically these 3 windows to be open. So yeah. Are you in a position where you can actually open the repo on your local machine?
I can, but the screen is still kind of very small, so I cannot. Yeah, I can't. I don't want to view both side by side because it's just
can't see
too
it.
small.
Okay. Now that's something that I've really never looked into as far as making the print bigger. Anybody in the class knows how to do that, where I can make this bigger in VS Code? Remember, we're here to all learn. I'm gonna guess, no, not that. Anybody? Anderson, this is where you come in.
If you hit control and scroll your mouse up, it should increase the size. So hold the control. If you have a mouse that scrolls up,
Yeah, I'm doing that, but this is all it's doing to me. It's moving the page up and down.
Press Control Shift and the plus sign.
Shift and the plus sign. Okay. That's my plus sign. Oh, look at that. That works. Perfect. Is that better? Or you want me to make it even more bigger? Maybe
It's
try
actually-
one more.
Yeah,
How is that?
yeah, much better. Thank you.
Perfect. And that's why I love
Better
these
than it
things,
was
because
before.
I just learned something new on VS Code. Thank you, Eddie guy. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to move this so we can actually see the error message at the bottom there. So let's see, missing required argument. So we're looking at module VPC main TF, which is this one, and that will be on line 29, right? And here they actually told you straight up, we need you to implement this resource. So they did not implement the private subnets resource. And again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to grab that and paste it, and we'll just talk about it real quick. So module VPC main. Private subnet. So that's what it would look like. And if you were doing it again on your own, the way I made sure that what I was doing made sense. It's again very similar to the implementation of your public subnet, right? You're getting your VPC ID, you get your CIDR blocks, you get your availability zone. If you look, it's kind of exactly the same thing. Right? Now, what you don't want to do here is you don't want to map a public IP on launch. So that was the one thing that I really changed. I mean, you want to make sure that you're not, putting public IPs in your private subnet. So it has to be false there. And then you count, instead of counting the public subnets, you basically count your private subnets. And then the tags, the tagging, you're tagging var.environment and your private subnet. And what they're doing here with this command, if you're looking at it, and it doesn't seem to make sense, a substring, right? We're going to start at index minus number 1, which is basically the last item in that particular string. And then we're going to get 1. So if you were looking at, let's say, US-East-1A, then you will have just the A that's going to be added to the name of that subnet, of the particular subnet that I'm generating. And as you count, it will just go up A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. And that allows you to have a unique name as a tag for that particular resource. Just if you were wondering what that is about. So that was the implementation of the private subnet. Are we good?
all looks good.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So we do the same thing, Terraform plan. Look at that. So we are kind of out of the hot waters. Terraform is actually telling us that he's in a position now where he can actually create the resources. And one thing that I mentioned that is, again, recommended practice is to, version your execution plan, right? And let me bring that back. And you want to do that because, again, something happens down the road, you can go back and take a look at it. So the way that is, you will basically do an output of your Terraform execution plan into a file. And you will definitely push it to the repo. So I definitely want to do that. So that will be a Terraform plan, but I'll just say output, and I can just call it execution plan 01 to say that's the first time that I'm running, something like that. And then I'll run it. Okay, my flag is incorrect. I think it's a big O, not a small. Stand by.
It's OUT out.
Say that again. I have the answer somewhere. It's just
Yeah, that's OUT.
that's out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Execution plan. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, for a minute I wasn't looking at the documentation. Actually, I can do this again. It's not going to be a problem. Just because I wiped it and I'm not sure everybody saw it. So save the plan to execution plan 01, right? And then if I wanted to execute this down the road, all I have to do is the Terraform apply and, you know, give it as a parameter, the execution plan file. But what I want here though is if I do a git status, right, I have all these files that I've modified. I even have my execution plan. So I can actually push all of this. And yeah, we did a bunch of Terraform in it. Okay, so I have my git status, I have my git commit. I'm going to say fixed errors and created execution plan. And then I should be able to push that. Okay. And at the end, just again, because I don't have plenty of real estate on the screen. Okay, so this did not get pushed up. So I have to do this manually. Can get into the discussion. This is a Git issue. The first one, because it's a dot in front of it. And the execution plan, I believe, I don't remember the reason, but there's a reason why those two don't get uploaded. It should be in the document that I shared with you guys. So what we can do here is just do a git add. So you just add them manually. Yeah, add it, and I can now do a git commit. Actually, I'm going to use the same message that I had earlier. Already added the file, so I don't need that. And I can do that. Okay. Status. Normally it would show, it should show that the branch is clean, right? The branch is up to date. Everything is clean. So we've saved, we've now pushed up the execution plan and all the code with all the corrections that we made earlier. So at this point, we can just do a Terraform apply. Remember, I saved that command earlier. No, not that Terraform. It was Terraform. And execution plan. Document, is that the correct command? I want to make sure I got the right command. Okay. So Terraform apply, applying the execution plan. While it's doing that, I'm going to log onto my AWS environment. That way we can confirm. And even before that, we can confirm from the command line, obviously, using the CLI from AWS. And confirm that the resources are created, but we can also log in and actually see that from the console as well. Are we looking so far, guys and ladies?
Sorry, I missed that. What is the execution plan?
The execution plan, when you basically do a Terraform plan, Terraform scans all your code and based on the dependencies, because just to give you an example, right? If you're creating, let's say a VPC, right? You want to have all these pieces, but there should be like an order because some resources depend on other resources, right? And Terraform basically generates a graph that says, this is the order of execution that I would run if I was going to create the resources based on your code. And it's like a mapping on how Terraform is going to build the whole infrastructure. so that you save that somewhere, and then when you do apply, Terraform will just read that file and just go step by step.
So how did you define, I'm sorry to take you back, but how did you define your execution plan? Is it that you went to, it was automatically generated?
Yeah, the Terraform generates the execution plan
Okay.
based on the code that you write.
Okay.
Yeah, the execution plan is a name you give to your plan outputs.
Yeah, so I mean, we can go here and take a look. This is the file in question, right? But it's a binary, like it's not gonna show you anything. I don't know if that's your question.
I think he wanted to know the command again. You can show him the command that you used to generate that file.
Okay.
The out thing, yeah. That's what I think that he want to know.
Okay. So I'll just, you open, I mean, all you will do is a Terraform, you do the plan, right? Because we try to generate the plan and dash out. In other words, I want to generate an output of the plan, execution plan, and then you will just put a file name, whatever name you want. And Terraform will push that execution plan into that particular document.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, okay, I get that. So instead of defining Terraform apply, but what you can just do is you can say Terraform apply the execution plan based on the plan that the output of the Terraform plan you've actually run. Correct?
Correct.
So is it different from, so why do you need to do that? Can't you just do a Terraform plan and then Terraform apply immediately? Is it best practice to actually just specify the output plan, or could you have just run a Terraform plan and a Terraform apply afterwards?
You can even just go straight to a Terraform apply, because when you do a Terraform apply, normally if you don't, especially if you don't specify the execution plan, Terraform would actually do a plan first, and it will tell you, this is what I'm about to do, enter yes to start the creation. You've seen that before, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So the reason why they recommend this is that you have the execution plan and you can actually version it. This is a best practice from HashiCorp. And what I've tried to do is, after we did the class and everything else like that, I went back and basically not just Terraform up and running is a great resource. Those Neve, whatever his name is, he's one of the guys that created Terraform. And he actually talks about what is the best way to use the environment. And that's one of the things that they recommend. So,
okay. So you can actually you can have a copy of your last execution plan and just
think about it this way. And that just on top of my head, as you're asking the question, right? So I just create my infrastructure, something happens, everything gets wiped out. I can just go and get my execution plan and do a Terraform apply right there.
Awesome. I think it makes
what I'm
sense.
saying? So it's kind of like a Git. I mean, it allows you almost like that Git type version where you can go back and say, I want this version of my infrastructure. Because think about it, your code maybe has changed since the last time you did Terraform plan, right? So if you do Terraform plan now, you may not have what you had last week. But if I saved my execution plan, I can still go back to that version of my infrastructure.
Correct. Thanks. I think it makes sense. It makes sense. Clear. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's see. I'm trying to get to my former window. I have too many windows. Okay, so still creating. It takes a minute, obviously, to create the resources. But that's kind of the first part, if you will, of the troubleshooting. So we actually able to create the resource. The second aspect, and yeah, perfect. We have execution completed. So we actually create the VPC. We create 24 resources, and we can actually go and check to make sure that. And I'm just going to copy the command, the describe VPC command that we can use without necessarily having to log in. And all we have to do is enter the right VPC ID, which is this one. And that right there, proves to us that AWS has the VPC. I'm going to log in just again for visual confirmation to AWS itself.
Oh, sorry, I missed the very last command that you just executed. Can you please show
Yeah,
me?
it's just it's a CLI command from AWS, right? The VPCs are kind of connected under the EC2 module. So
Oh,
you do
thank you.
all the commands that, I mean, do you want me to go over the command or you good?
No,
Yeah,
that's
also, if you have access to the documentation, it's on page 20 on that PDF.
Yeah, but I was asking if she wants me to go over the command itself or she's.
oh no, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So I'm logging on, let me get my MFA code. Yeah, so even in my local lab at home, I set up MFA on everything. Just, authentication is incorrect. Okay, what's the problem? You always work until I'm about to do a demo. Yeah, enter the wrong information. Bear with me. Because I really want us to actually get a visual. I mean, we know it's there, but I would like to be able to get a visual of the VPC and hook into take a look. Oh yeah, I know what I was doing. I was using the wrong MFA. Yep, I was using the wrong MFA code. Yeah, my home setup, I basically have like AWS account for production general, kind of simulate what you would have, you know, in the production environment. So VPC. And this is the VPC we just created. Sandbox application. I'm going to just minimize it to the side and we can confirm that's what we just did. So we create the VPC right there. We'll bring this down. Okay, availability zone, environment, sandbox. Okay, so for instance, just the CIDR of the VPC that we just created. Yeah, I hate this because I don't have enough room to work. But if you look at the CIDR and box right there, same CIDR that we have. I mean, it's there, I mean, for sure. So any questions, comments?
Oh, thank you so much for this demo. Is it
Can you
so
elaborate? It's important. Why do you say it? Like what difference do you see? What's the impact? What else can we have done and stuff like that? There's a second part, but the second part is more like housekeeping, right? This is the first part is really the troubleshooting. But why would you make the comment that you just made? Go ahead. Like what value do you see? Do you see this as something that can be helpful? That's what I'm trying to see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, if I'm going to speak, I think this is very, very valuable because most of us here, I would probably speak for myself. I play with this every day, and especially the fact that I'm actually also new to Terraform. I'm quick to reference the documentation guide and just get the code I need to just get started. But you know,
Right.
this have actually also shown me like the value add in terms of some intrinsic commands and the thoughts around why you are running some certain things. I think it makes sense and it's clear. It's quite clear. I'd actually even appreciate if this is something that's is even done on the weekends because I have just learned something from it and it's very valuable for me.
Awesome. And we both learned, right? I learned how to make my characters bigger in Visual Code. So thank you, Eddie. So it's really a pleasure, guys. I mean, the group has been awesome. I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest beneficiaries of what Anderson and all of you guys have been doing. I am 100% willing to share whatever I know. So if anybody has a question, and I'm sure you've seen it, that if somebody posts something and I have an answer, and that's what we should be all doing, because the more we do that, the stronger we all become. So thank you so much for that. Any other comment? And then we can really quickly move to the second portion, which is really just, like I said, housekeeping. But what housekeeping does is that it allows you to now be in a position where your code is easier to maintain. Like if down the road you have to make changes and stuff like that. Just to give you an example, I mean, we're looking at it right now. If I'm looking at this particular code, what's wrong with this picture? Okay, let me give you a hint, right? You have 5 lines. In 4 of the 5, you have a var definition, and here you have a value. What's the problem with this, having a value right there?
It's not aligned.
Yes.
It's hard coded, and
it's hard coded. That's the problem. What it means is that if tomorrow I'm talking about changes VPC ID are blocked, I have to go inside my module definition and change basically the code. And the way Terraform looks at it is that that's a brand new code. In other words, it's going to refactor everything. Now, here we're playing with a few lines, right? But imagine if you had like this giant infrastructure, and then you have to go, first of all, find where the value is, and then, change it. Not good form. Not good form. You want to have your values in your TF-var file, just like they have here. Because by doing this, if I want to create, let's say now the production environment, what do I need to do? I can just copy all this and just change that variable, bam, and I have a new environment without touching my code. So that's the second part of this lab, and I call it refactoring. I'm not going to go through every individual step. We created a branch, right? So at this point, what we'll do is we know it's working. We would basically initiate a pull request, have somebody review it, whatever, merge the request as needed. And we will also create, as a matter of fact, a new branch. I would, if I was doing it, I would create a new branch that I would call refactor. Because again, this particular branch, that was my hot fix. I fixed the problem. I don't want to, continue to mess with it. I want to leave it alone, and then create a new branch where I'm going to reorganize this code so that it becomes really easy to maintain and duplicate if I want to, create my different environments, for instance. Questions, comments?
Yeah. So what's the difference between an execution plan and a Terraform state file?
Question. Good question. The execution plan is more of the steps, and your state is more of the description of your resources. So one is static, and the other one basically captures the dynamic, the dynamic graph, if you will, of how the resources are going to be created. The state file only tells you you have X, Y, Z in your environment, but doesn't tell you in what order, for instance, they are going to be created. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So can I jump in real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Quick question. What do you mean by state file? Do you mean the Terraform that's states?
Yeah, that's the state file if you have it
okay.
on the local environment.
So the state file will contain basically defined as a current state of your infrastructure, right? That's why you have friendly up and running. And the execution plan is like the desire, what you want to what you want to deploy, right? But as soon as you run that Terraform apply, either using CI/CD pipeline or using, the Terraform CLI, it will create a state file, and that state file become what the current state of your infrastructure, what you have deployed. Make sense?
Sounds good.
Okay. So,
Question for
sure, go ahead.
the Terraform.cfvar. What's the function of Terraform.cfvar? I know you highlight.
We'll touch on it. Yeah, you just ahead of the schedule. The TFVAR files, if you see, for instance, right? I want to separate my values from my code, right? It's like the whole idea of separating data from the code. And what it does is that if there's a change on your data side, you're not touching your code and vice versa. If you mix the two, anytime there's a change, everything changes. So same idea. I have my code, right? Everything else. And then I have these TFR files where I can actually specify default values and say, okay, now I'm trying to create a sandbox environment, a dev environment. When we refactor the code, it's going to be more information here. It will make more sense. But again, this code was kind of done like this on purpose to practice troubleshooting and refactoring. And we're gonna do that like right now, and it's gonna be more clear. But that's the short answer. But when you see it, as we continue, you will see why and how you can actually use your Terraform TFR file. But the idea is you define your default values, and there's so many different ways of doing it. You can have a TFR file per environment, right? So if I have the sandbox environment or the QA or whatever, the dev environment, I can have, let's say, a different type of, let's say, EC2 instances, right? So I can set up all of that in one TFR file that I call, let's say, development.tfrs, for instance.
Okay.
So it just gives you another level of abstraction where you can separate, the different type of environments that you try to create instead of, again, having everything mixed together. Go ahead.
Okay. Is it different? So is it different from your variable file?
From what?
Your variable file, because
yes.
It is.
The variable file defines the variable, right? Description, type. But you don't want to have values in the variable file. Because again, if you have values in there, when the value change, because values by definition, they change, right? They told you you were using, let me go back to TFR file, for instance. So I'm working on the sandbox environment. So if I put that in my code and now I'm trying to do the dev environment, I have to go modify the code. Terraform understands this as, if you will, a parameter type file where you're going to specify the value, the different values for your current use case.
Okay, thank you.
Answer your question. And we're going to do that right now. As we do it,
add to that,
as we do it, it should become even more clear, right? So if you go, I think it's on page 24, correction, page 23. So we start refactoring the code. So the first thing is you want to have all your variables into the variable file. So for instance, if I go to under my sandbox VPC.
Sorry,
right? Yes.
Please, what is the, I'm sorry, please, what documentation are you referring to? Page, like you just said, page 23 or 24, what documentation is that?
That's the PDF that I shared on the WhatsApp group.
I don't think I have that. I just joined this group yesterday.
Are you on the WhatsApp group?
Yes, I am.
It should be on the WhatsApp group right now.
Right now?
Yes, I pasted it at the beginning of the class.
Okay, I'll check. Thank you.
It should be the very last thing on the WhatsApp group.
Okay. So, but at any rate, the idea is to understand the concepts, right? So if I go to my VPC file, right, I have all these variables in that file. Just like in Docker, you don't want to mix, you want to separate by layers, but based on what changes more often. You want to start with things that don't change that often. That's why you start with that base image, and then you build on it as things change more often. Same idea, right? If I'm doing my VPC, do I really want to have variables, definitions within the VPC? Probably not, right? So what I will do here is I will grab all of these. They don't belong there. As a matter of fact, I don't have a variables file right now, so I'm going to create one. So I'm going to create here a variables TF. Okay. And I'm going to go to my VPC. I'm going to say, I want to grab all the variables. The module can stay there, that's fine. But I don't want any variables in that file. And I'm going to go and paste all of this in this file. The good news is at this point, I haven't changed much because Terraform, as long as the code is in that particular folder, it doesn't matter where it is. Terraform is able to see it, right? But we're going to do a little bit more than that in a minute. Another thing I don't want is I don't want my output information within my module. And again, separation of concern. This is an output. This is the definition of my module.
A couple, we're learning.
Say that again. Say that again. I did not copy what you said.
No, sorry.
Okay. And then I'm going to, same thing. I don't have an outputs file, so I'm going to create one. And I'm going to put my output in there. So why do I do that? In the future, if I want to create another output, guess what? All I have to do is go to the output file. If I want to create another variable, all I have to do is go to the variable file. If I want to make a modification to the VPC, I go to the VPC file. But when you mix, again, at this stage, right, we have just a few lines of code. But imagine if you had, I don't know, 1,000 lines of code. And now you have to go and find out where did they actually define XYZ variable. I mean, that could be really a pain. So we just did that now. We've separated things by function, if you will. We have the variables where they belong. We have the outputs where they belong, right? Now, the other problem that we have here is that we have the variable, but we have values. We have hard-coded values in the variables. That also is not good form. The values, remember, have to be where? In the TFR file. So what I will do again is I'm going to do this right now, but we're going to refactor all of that. So I'm going to copy all my variables. I'm going to bring them here to the TFR file. And I'm not trying to define the variable, right? So I'm just going to define the default value. As a matter of fact, I don't even need to define it because I'm in the TFR file. I already said it's a variable in this file, right? So if I go to TFR, all I have to do is specify the value, the default value. So I'm going to wipe out all of this and say that's basically what I'm going to use as a default public subnet. And I'm going to do the same thing for every single variable in here. And again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to copy and paste, but that's the idea. I want to have all my stuff looking good like that, where it's separated. The values are in the TFR files, the variables are in the variable file. Is it good, clear so far or not? Or do I need to explain some more?
Sorry, right? Creating it. Wait, maybe. So you have another variable, but all of them are in the sandbox folder from what I'm seeing here, because you have two different variables, right? You have a variable for your module. I have like a variable for your deployment folder, say your sandbox folder. So the reason why you're creating the variable, you have a variable in your sandbox folder is because of what exactly what exactly are you trying to achieve?
Remember, those variables were there already, right? But they were in the VPC file. So the first thing we try to do is separation of concern. You don't want to mix things that don't belong together. The VPC, you're defining a particular piece of your infrastructure. In order to do that, you're using variables because you understand that with times things can change. So you don't want to just hard code everything. So use variables for that. When you have variables, you don't want to put, again, hard code the default values the way they have it here. So I copied this and I put it there. And I also went to the TFR files with the same information. And I just put the default value for each variable. Then I have to go to the variable file itself and remove the default value because I don't need that. All I'm trying to do here is just define my variables. So that's the way it will end at the end. And again, let me know if this answers your question or not. But you don't want default values in your variable file. So that would be the answer. Now I've defined my variables. So if I want to create a new variable, I would come here. If I want to change a variable, I come here, right? But if I'm looking at changing a value, I come to this file instead. And now if you look at this, think about it. I'm trying to create now 3 different environments. I can come copy this code. As a matter of fact, I can just copy the terraform.tfr file, create another copy of it, where I can specify a new environment, a new CIDR block, right, for the public subnet, for the private availability zone. I can just now create, different environments just using the same piece of code and values. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. So I have one question. So do you have to do all this separation for the sake of production?
Yes, 100%.
So if you don't do all these separations, so what's the likely outcome?
The likely outcome is you're going to have a pile of spaghetti. In other words, when they ask you to make a change, or if there's a problem, now you may have to go and read the 1,000 piece of line of code, or you have to do, I don't know, grep on the files, because stuff is not going to be where it belongs. The idea is you want the foundation of your house to be at the foundation level. You want the walls to be where they belong. It's an organization, it's a framework. And this is not me, right? This is HashiCorp. This is how they want us to operate in terms of best practices, because they've shown and they've tested and they said, this is, if you operate this way, your code is going to be much easier to maintain and troubleshoot. And if you think about it, if we had it in this format, everything that we did earlier would have been much easier, because all the variables, guess what, would have been in the variable file, right? All the values would have been in the TFR files. And the list, you can go on and on. Like this, we don't even want that, right? So what can we do to fix this problem?
Yeah, we create a variable for that.
Create a variable, perfect. So we'll go to the variable file, and what kind of variable would that be? It's a string, right? And we're looking at what the VPC CIDI block. So if we go to variable, I can just grab this guy right here and then just duplicate it and say I have VPC, I think it was CIDR block, as a matter of fact. I can just do that right there. And if I go back here, no, that VPC, that's what it was. Okay. So I can grab this guy. I'm going to save it for now, and I can just say I now have a variable that will contain that particular value. Now I have a code that is really code. I don't have any hard-coded value, but I have to go somewhere and specify that value that we just copied, right? And guess what? They actually had it here already. So if it wasn't there, you would just add this line, right? And again, now I'm looking at my code. All I have in there is the definition of my module. Everything is variable based, right? And if I want to add a new variable, change something, I can come here. If I want to change a value, I can go to my TFR file and change values. Like I said, production environment, probably a different, different subnet, different CIDRs, availability zone. It could be different EC2 types, whatever the case may be. But I have one location where I can go and set up my values instead of having them mixed together with all my code.
Okay, maybe let me add something, because I wanted to add some minutes ago. The utility of this is that if you test your code, your modules in your dev environments, and then you want to go to production, you don't have to change anything in the main code. So for instance, if your production environment has like 100 siders, all what you do is come here and then update those siders to the 100.
Yep.
When you apply it, it applies.
Yep.
So that's the usefulness of Terraform.
100%. I mean, you just said it exactly what I've been saying all the time, which is, yeah, you're right. That's exactly why you do it this way. But if you don't do it this way, and now you try to create a different environment, you will have to go like they had it before. You will have to go, let's say, in the VPC to change the value that was here. Then you will have to, start looking around. It just gives you, this is just like, I call it housekeeping, right? If your house is clean, you can find your stuff easy. If it's not, you may have something that you can't find. Where are my keys? I have no idea. Stuff like that. So it's two things. If there's a problem, it's easier to find out what's going on. And if you try to use that code to do something else, maintain, upgrade, generate a different environment, much, much easier. So, and that's the best practice. And this is how everything is built in terms of modules. If you're looking at Terraform registry, this is how they do it. And if you do it that way, you can generate infrastructure really fast. Really, really fast. And if you go on the Terraform registry, they have examples of how to do it. All you will need is basically copy one of these, call the module, the type of that you want, and just specify really your TFRs values. That's all you will specify. And in 5-10 minutes, you have your VPC. your work now will become to go and tweak it to really match that particular use case. So that's how they recommend that we should be.
I have a
They
question.
don't want us to
Question, though.
reinvent the wheel. Go ahead.
Quick question. Sorry, I joined a little late. I know you had mentioned that there's a documentation online, but I didn't see that.
It's not on WhatsApp.
Yeah, but what group in WhatsApp though?
Oh, the general group. General group. Can somebody do that? Because like I said, I have only so much real estate in terms of stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, can somebody on the background send him the file, please?
Okay, thank you so much.
So let me finish real quick and then we'll do questions, right? So after you've refactor your code, obviously you want to do a pull request, the whole 9 yards, have somebody review it. Make sure that, oh, by the way, let's do that. Because now we've moved stuff around. How do you validate, quote unquote, test to make sure that everything that we did is still legit? If I do a Terraform apply, for instance, am I going to get the same result? Or is all of a sudden going to say, oh, there's a problem now? And you guys saw the answer, right? Okay, let me bring this window up so we can actually really see it. So if your refactoring should not change anything, you're just moving stuff around, right? And you see the answer, Terraform is saying, yeah, nothing's changed, everything is still the same. And they actually return you the VPC ID as well. So the refactoring doesn't make the code work, right? It just, again, it's just like cleaning your house. You can decide not to clean your house. You probably have a poor quality of life, right? That's it. It doesn't mean you're not going to be living, but you know, same idea. By refactoring the code, reorganizing it, it makes it easy to maintain, easy to troubleshoot, easy to apply in other environments. So that's the idea. Obviously, at the end, one thing I wanted to mention, and we talked about it in class before, everything we did here at the back end was local, right? If you're working in a team, probably not a good idea because now, you know, you can have, how do you call it, concurrent access to the state. You don't want that because it's secretly corrupted. Let's say I'm doing a Terraform apply, you also do a Terraform apply, and somehow we working on the same environment. You really want to have something shareable, which like could be Terraform Cloud, for instance, or you can actually use S3 to store the state and use a DynamoDB table to lock. Those are kind of like one of the two ways of doing it. So that's one thing I wanted to point out really quick. And at the end, remember to delete your infrastructure. And I think that covers the entirety of the discussion today. And I'm going to do that before Terraform destroy. And you can always do auto approve, right? To just tell them, I don't want you to ask me, I'm sure. So that was kind of the content that we had for you guys tonight. So questions, comments, go ahead.
So question, please, right? If you go to your vpc.cf, right, you're referencing a module, right? And your module already has the variable. Yes, I understand you said that the Terraform .tf it is just basically for housekeeping so that you don't have any hard-coded parameters in your actual module. So what is now the difference of referencing the module when you're already referring to a variable in your deployment folder, sandbox? Does my question make sense though?
Yeah, I definitely understand your question.
So
yes.
Can I? Oh, go ahead.
No. If you want, I mean, remember it's a teamwork. I don't have a problem with you answering. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to answer, but I just want to ask another question. Whoever asked that question right now. Cool. So let me ask you a quick question, okay? Let's say you are awake and this thing we deploy right now, right, is a sandbox environment. Now they want you to deploy same resources in dev and stage and pre-prod. How are you going to do it?
So, sorry, come again. Were you asking me the question? Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please, can you repeat yourself? I'm sorry. I probably lost you there.
Okay, so my question is, we just deploy 24 different resources, right?
Right.
in our sandbox environment. Let's
Okay.
say they ask you, you have a task asking you to deploy same resources with same configuration in your stage environment, dev environment, and pre-prod environment. How are you going to do that?
I'm just going to use the same code I have in my VPC, my main.vpc, my vpc.tf. I'm just going to recreate it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, but the parameters should not be the same. Think of the parameters.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. So you see the sandbox. Can you click on that drop down? I want you to close that little.
You want me to close the sandbox?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So you see right here, right? This is our sandbox environment. Let's say you want to recreate this same configuration in dev or pre-prod. You only have to duplicate that sandbox and then make few changes, right? You say where you say environment equals sandbox, you go there and change it to the environment you want to deploy. But you see the difference? In this case right here, we're talking about child and root module relationship, right? I don't know if you kind of familiar with that, but the child module right here is that module we have. And when you are creating a module, most of the time you hear people say, I'm talking about child module. That's your main module, your main module. And that main module will contain at least 3 different files: main file, output, variable. Sometimes if you go to work, you see license or you see README.
Yep.
To get more information about,
You can even have testing, whatever. So yeah.
Yep, right. So in that module right now, that variable, we are defining whatever we'll be creating in the module, right? That's why you have that variable. Output, if you click on the output right now, you see a bunch of, output value. But when you run Terraform apply, it won't be printing out those output stuff, right? Because what? You are not deploying the module, but you'll be deploying the root module, in this case, sandbox. So we are using information from the module, the child module, to create your environment.
If I can add something real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Think about it this way, right? Again, the recommended practice from HashiCorp is to try to use their modules. And I was gonna just showcase how to do that real quick. So you go to the Terraform registry, right? So if I wanted, let's say, to create an AWS VPC, I would go to AWS, right? And I would pick the module, like that's the Terraform module for a VPC. And here is basically the code that I will get. You get that code, you put it in a let's say main.tf5 on your local environment. When you do the Terraform init, what it's going to do is it's going to kind of create a structure that looks like this one. It's going to download your module, and you will have the other file here. And then you basically, like Eddie Guy was saying, you're going to refer to everything that's up there to do the work for you. But then because you have it there, you can create different environments based on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the idea. Another way to look at it is that this is infrastructure as code, really. All of it is infrastructure as code, right? But this is really infrastructure as code. You have all the little things defined here. And here I'm kind of an abstraction level above it. And I'm going to use all of this to do the dirty work for me. And all I'm going to specify here is really what I'm trying to accomplish, and if you go to the Terraform registry and you run a few of those modules, you will see what I mean. They actually will show you simple VPC, more complicated VPC. So they give you all of these tools, and then you can use them in the sandbox or the dev or whatever, folder to create your infrastructure. But the work is really done here. All you're doing is referring to them. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Thank you very much.
And the beauty of this, by the way, and this is from the guys from HashiCorp, they have tons of good videos. I wanted to actually add some of the links that really helps you understand this stuff at a different level. Because the beauty of doing this is I don't have to worry too much about the gateways and all of those little details, right? I can just use it here. Now, if there's a problem somewhere, I still have access to the really what is the infrastructure as code. That's the idea, right? I'm going to just use the module, do what I need. But if there's a problem or I want to tweak it, I can actually go down and dirty into the code itself, which is the module, and make those changes. But here, all you're doing is referring to the things that are defined in the module and combining them to generate your infrastructure.
Okay, makes sense. So your module is where you define your components to use?
Your module is really where the dirty work is being done. And the recommendation from HashiCorp is do not start writing the module from scratch. Use one of their true and tested module, right? And they give you examples of different kinds of modules. If you whatever you wanted to deploy, they probably have something for you. And use that as a starting point, and you refer to it the way they did it here, right? And all I'm doing is now I'm specifying, okay, I'm going to specify availability zone. I'm going to, do the environment. You know that, a VPC has more than this, right? In terms of potential information, but this is all I want for this particular use case. I'm going to refer and get all I need, leave the rest behind. But if down the road, let's say they tell me, oh, we want to add XYZ, I can go grab it and add it here. I don't have to build anything from scratch.
Okay,
that's
awesome.
kind of the idea.
Makes sense. Awesome. Thanks for the clarity.
Sure.
Very, very, very important.
Yep. And like I said, you have the repo, you have the documentation step by step. I mean, feel free to do it. I've done this particular assignment probably 3 times, and every time I've done it, I see something new. Like this documentation that I shared with you guys was not like that 2 days ago. So there's a benefit as to practicing these things and kind of looking at them, try to understand them. Also listening to experts. Like I said, one of my go-to person is, and I probably should know his name by this point, but he is the guy who wrote Terraform Up and Run. He really tells you what to do and what not to do if you try to not pull your hair, because of the code that you wrote. And maybe I can actually give you one of the links real quick since we are here. Let's do that. Because again, the whole idea is to share.
So
Yes,
I think we're like inching towards 2 hours. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
this is the last thing I'm going to share real quick, and we are really done at this point.
Okay.
And I'm not going to play the video. I just wanted to. So this is the video. I'm just going to share the link. If you watch this video, it is really, I mean, it's to me one of the best videos on Terraform. He has this one, and he has this one also. That way, he talks about what they learned after writing 300,000 lines of infrastructure. That's cool. He gives you during this video a checklist of the things that you really want to check if you try to write production code. So that's the value on this one. But really, the first one is where he explains how you want to think about Terraform. So these are the experts, and those guys they know a few things that we don't. So listening to them is probably a good idea. I'm going to put that really quick, and that was the last thing I had, guys. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, feel free. Anderson, you have anything else? Eddie Guy, Francis, anything?
This is a great job. This was very thorough, and we'll keep doing this. I see that Ephraim was here. Ephraim is so active over here. Mr. Ephraim, what's going on? All right.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yeah. So that's good. It was good you were here. It only added value. Eddie Guy's here. Francis is here. We are all here. Idris is here.
Oh, hi, Idris.
Yeah.
So did you post the link?
Idris is like incognito. He didn't say anything tonight.
So did you post the link in the chat or?
I'm in a noisy place, so that's why I'm
Can you post it, Francis? I don't know what's wrong with my computer. Oh, you know what? I got it. Let me post it right now.
Yeah, the WhatsApp, YouTube link on YouTube. WhatsApp or on WhatsApp is better. It's more persistent.
Yeah, correct. Let me put that on WhatsApp.
So this is good stuff, and we'll keep doing this. Next up is, I believe Idris has something he has to share, wants to share here. And then, we'll keep doing this, keep learning.
Yep.
And this was a great job. Thanks for sharing.
Oh no, thank you for this is again, it's a learning opportunity. It's always a win-win. As you share, you learn. As you I didn't know how to like I said, I'm gonna keep saying that, to increase the font on on Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good idea, so it doesn't kill your eyes on the long run. So again, thank you so much, Eddie guy, for that.
If you have a smart mouse, like that's basically.
Oh, and for those who and it is he's in a noisy place. That's why he's not talking.
That's okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's good stuff, man. Thank you. And if anybody else does not have any question, we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
And then if we have something coming up, we'll
Just a
post
quick
it.
one. Yeah, sorry, I think I just joined the group actually, and I came in from the from a Telegram channel, and I just joined,
From what channel?
From Telegram. It's
the Pan African channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that I just joined the full stack or WhatsApp group, can you please repost the documentation or the document so that I can see it? Thank you.
Sure.
And is the video link going to be there too? Maybe just for some of us that want to go over what was done.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
We'll put it in. No problem.
Yeah, I just posted the PDF file, and that it shows all the steps. The one thing yeah. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I try to respond ASAP when somebody.
Sorry, do we have this class every Saturday, or is just if someone has anything to share? If someone have anything to share?
No, this was just a demo. We usually have demos. We used to have classes, but we stopped.
We kind of. So is that like a demo every day, every Saturday, or is it like how often does
every now and then when we have content, we'll share it just like this.
Okay.
Right. But the WhatsApp group, and I think a lot of you are like new coming from Pan African channel because I posted this over there.
Yeah.
The group you see for your own self, the DevOps group, how active it is in regards to every and anything DevOps is like, I believe not, maybe the most active DevOps forum, and we are growing it. So it's very active. And you always see these things come up over there.
That's very good. I probably will need to reach out to maybe you or someone because I just joined the group and I'm just getting into DevOps myself right now.
Awesome. We also do provide.
We need a mentor or something.
Yeah, we do provide training, mentorship. We don't really provide like training. Our training is more of a mentorship kind of approach, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
This stuff is out there. This stuff is online. But what we do is we actually go deep dive into like stuff and work through labs and work through, projects. That's our approach. We don't teach because this thing is online. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's not teaching, just mentoring.
We have mentors. That's what we do. And, of course, that's our module. We don't teach, we mentor.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to post the link to the second video as well. Again, really good stuff. Really, really good stuff.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.